ladies. Welcome to another podcast for Enjoy Your Children Homegrown. There's so many different things that you can name this, but our topic for today is custody and protecting our children from father's abuse. And with me today is Erin and Adina. I'm just going to let them say hello to you before I continue.
Hello, thank you for inviting me again.
Hello, ladies. I'm so glad to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Mm. And although this is a difficult topic to discuss, right? And it's not it's not very, what's the word? Now I can't remember the English word, but it doesn't happen so often. It's in the
Yeah, it's
minority
more of
or
a rare, yes, it
a
definitely is
rare,
a
that's the
definite
word I was
rare
looking for.
situation. But
Yes,
it is one that
yes,
even though it's rare, like every exception, right?
yes,
Everybody wants to focus on, I can't do what you're saying to do because what if, you know?
yes,
Like I
yes,
mean, like with abortion or something. Oh, well, yeah, but what if for the health of the mother? Well, if it was for the health of the mother, since I was supposed to be aborted, I wouldn't be here. Neither would all of
yes,
my grandchildren. And I don't know what the ones that tried to marry my children, they wouldn't, have a spouse. So you just
mm,
don't know. But I'm a very purist. Nope, not for any reason. That's just
yes,
my thing. And
Mhm.
primarily because with everything, trusting God, right?
yes,
Man will
for
say
sure.
this if you don't do this, and there's a lot of fear. And I think that's the other thing is women will fear this. People will
Mm,
plant that seed in their head. Maybe they've been abusive this way. Plus, we have to talk about what constitute abuse because people will
mm,
they'll use that word and there's a lot of categories of abuse too. So I know we're going to
mm.
talk about that, but anyway, I'll
Yeah.
let you finish with your introduction and then we'll get going.
Yes, and as you said, there's a lot of things that falls under or that people actually think falls under the umbrella of abuse, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
just thinking of what the children learn in their books, the different types of abuse. And um, for me as a child, it wasn't that complicated, but it seems it's more complicated today than it
Mm-hmm.
was when I was little. But even though this is a rare, something that happens rarely, it's still something that people ask. It's just like you said with
Hmm.
the abortion, right? Everyone will go to the extreme to ask that extreme question, but we
Mm-hmm.
cannot deny that it is happening and that it is here. So,
Yes.
with me, Erin and Adina, I want us to discuss this and just see, where we go from here. And if someone asks a question, because we had a question, and this is
Mm-hmm.
where the podcast
Mm-hmm.
came from. If someone
Mm-hmm.
has question, what would you answer them and what would you, because for me it's
Mm-hmm.
difficult, I won't even know where to start at most of the time when someone would ask me a question like this. So I'm going to give over to you, Erin.
Yes, I mean, I have out of all the ministering, of course, this has come up about abuse. And,
Mm,
even going back to as a spouse, as a wife,
mm,
abuse, I'm being abused by my husband. But the
mm,
first question usually is that when I step back because I think I'm out of my realm here. I don't know answers
mm,
to anything. I don't
mm,
I don't care that I've been in 35 years. I don't have an answer for anything. Besides the fact there's so many variables and what is she asking? So I
mm,
always go and I step back because what I first think and the answer that comes to my head is almost 100% of the time wrong. I'll think of
mm,
something that just comes and I have a lot of experience, but it's the opposite. So that's why it's very important to ask him,
yes,
your husband, the Lord, Heavenly Father, your best friend, whoever that person is that knows everything, can see everything, has all the answers. It does really specifically say if any of you lacks wisdom, let ask of the Father. So
mm,
I would recommend that. So um, saying that, I just feel more secure in it, but it doesn't really matter. He knows who you're talking to. So asking him.
yes,
And the first thing when this was posed, because I think you sent it to me and said, do you have any input? because somebody asked, is what the first thing he asked me, which always is a confirmation that he's talking to us, because we know when the Lord was walking on the earth, he always posed, people would ask him a question, he'd give them back a question, right?
Yes.
He'd always come back with a question. So the first thing that he asked me is like, well, what type of abuse? And I'm like, okay, because immediately I went to sexual abuse in my head. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, right?
Mm,
And I think
Mhm.
every single person does, because it's the worst one. I
mm,
don't know if it's our human nature, or because we're fearful of women. I don't know, because I have no idea, but we did. So I wonder, is it that? Is it sexual? Is it a verbal? Is it physical?
mm.
And even with all of those, there's so many varying degrees.
Yes.
That's why, how can we possibly, or how could a counselor, these people who pay to have somebody else
Mm,
tell them, how they don't know. And even if they were in the house, unless they had hidden cameras, right? I guess that would be the only way. But even then, you don't even know what the malice is in their hearts,
yes.
or the background of it. But the whole point is that we don't need to know all those things. The most important thing, I think, with everyone is, the first thing I would tell any mother in that, don't trust anyone for the answers. Don't trust us. The only thing that you can trust us is this: don't trust anybody. Don't rely upon man. Go to the source. Go to somebody who knows the answers. Go to somebody who can really protect you. And I think, before, jumping to the very end of our whole podcast, is that's what you have to do. Because
Mm,
ultimately is this: if I'm wrong, who's going to suffer? I'm not going to be around. That
yes.
counselor isn't going to be around. That police officer is telling you, you need to have this man arrested, and then he
Mm,
gets out and ends up with custody of your child, and you are paying child support to a sexual predator. This is happening in our court system. It's another reason. Back in the day, maybe it would be protected. I don't know. But all I know is today, you can't trust anybody for these
mm,
situations. And in the one asking him, and the second is, what exactly, well, I don't want to jump ahead because we have so many other, but that's the question. Is it what kind of abuse? And I think it, more than whether we need to know it, I think that they need to identify it in their heads,
yes.
right?
Mm,
Because
yes.
some will think, if you're yelling at them, if they come home and they yell at them, and that's verbal abuse, or, physical abuse is now, if I just put my hand on one of you here in the United
Mm,
States, I could be, physical abuse,
mm,
right? And it's like,
mm,
what, are you kidding me? If that's it, I won't just put
mm.
my hand on. If I'm going to be arrested, I might as well, punch you, like
Yeah.
I used to do in high school with the boyfriends who tried something. Like, my high school, the guy that took me to homecoming, I think he tried to kiss me or something. And I thought, heck, I just punched him, and his whole team saw him. Like, watch out, don't do that with her. So everybody knew. But I'd be arrested today. You can't even do
Mm,
that. So
mm,
anyway, and of course, sexual abuse is the worst. There's
mm.
also the thing of, who told you, or how do you know? Did your child tell you? And even then, there's these terrible mothers who are they're getting their daughters to say that they've been sexually abused by the father in order to
Yes.
get custody. And
Mm.
it's just, it has become so complicated and so
Mm,
horrific, really. How do you
mm,
even navigate something like this,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
And but I'll tell you that my biggest concern is when every single person says, and even if they don't even know to what level the abuse, because
Mm,
somebody will say abuse, like
mm.
all of us jump to, it's sexual abuse, right?
Yes.
And then the
Mhm.
next thing we're going to say is, get away, get out,
Mm,
move out, run away, get a restraining order. Oh my gosh. restraining order, that's not going to do anything other than the ones that are really psycho. They're just deranged or possessed or whatever. They're going to come after him like nothing. And that's what the fruits are. I think that's the one thing that we need to remember. He said, you'll know by the fruits. What are the fruits? Law enforcement, and I'm sure they, because of the type of job they're in, right? And the career they're in, theirs is, well, here in the United States, they've got a gun, they can go and protect. That's their thing. So they're going to want to protect, and they're certainly not going to say, just stay there. How could they? And it's not like we're saying, just stay there. All we're saying is you've got to trust somebody, and it can't be mankind. And we know that verse, and maybe we need to put that in the podcast on the bottom. It says, you know, cursed is the man who trusts in mankind and makes flesh his strength. They're cursed. Yes. But it does say, blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord and whose trust is the Lord. Ultimately,
I love
yes,
that.
it is. I get chills every time.
Yeah.
Because, and I just think of that is I-S. It's almost like the I am, right? Jesus is the I am, you know, I am, not I was. I am present. I am this. And who is the Lord? That is who he is and will always be. And if he is that, and we know too that the Lord says he's the Lord of hosts, which he's the ultimate, you know, battle, the head of the command of everything. He has everything, and he can stop anything, he can protect. And then it comes to, well, why did he allow these different things? Sin is in the world. Things are happening. And so what as mothers are we supposed to do? Well, it needs to be not mothers, as a mother of how can I do this? How can I protect? And you know, I don't know, but I do know that I have been asked, and the best one, and I'm not sure whether it was a sexual abuse. I keep thinking it was, because I was just so terrified to tell this mother about it, and she had her little children, and we met her at church. But I told her what everybody else didn't tell her. Everybody else said to do this. And actually she had tried those things as was part of it. Like we got a restraining order, and he just moved out and said, try and do it again. And your life is like he was going to take him out. And I didn't want to say. And so I was just begging, you know, God the Father to give me answers. Yeah. And I said, you can't trust anybody. Don't trust anybody's, but just trust him and tell him that. And whatever he tells you to do, do. Don't do what I mean, other than go and pray. You can trust me on that one. Can't go wrong on that. And then just do it. And they went down as a family to the altar when the altar call came. And I think every single one of them was crying. I can almost see them now all huddled together. And I saw her the next week, and she came over to me. She looked totally different. And she said when she got home, he had moved out.
Wow.
He had moved out while they were at church. While they were at church. And I saw her, I don't know, it was like 3 months later, 6 months. Anyway, did not show up. I saw her years later. He never had, she didn't know where he went. Now he just disappeared. Now I know this was a really horrible situation she was in. I know the children were afraid. It's not like, oh, I'm going to do this and this is what's going to happen to me. I can't guarantee that it will, of course, but I can't guarantee that it can't. All I know is that he is in control, and that is the one that you need to go to. That, right? I mean, am I explaining it right? Do either of you want to jump in and your opinion
Yes.
if you think you're crazy because you've never lived through it or something, or what do you want to say to what I said?
I don't think you're crazy, right? Because even from the background, I used to work in the South African Police Service. For the ladies that don't know,
Mm,
I didn't work as a police officer, but I worked with a lot of policemen, and even they would tell me, oh, and my former husband was also a policeman, and even they would tell me that going out to these cases, when they were called out to cases like these in the house, that was the most terrifying situations for them, because they
mm,
say, you know, when you go to any other scene, there's a clear perpetrator, there's a clear victim.
mm,
But
mm,
with this, you know, it's so difficult to discern, and it's like a very difficult situation to go, because it's so many gray areas. You don't, you know, you can't be judged of any of that, and
mm,
so even for them as policemen, it was difficult. So just think of, we cannot give anyone, you
mm,
know, so you have to do
Mm.
this, or you
mhm,
have to do what you're saying, Erin. You can
mhm,
just, like, you have to pray about it, and that's about
mhm,
it. Because,
mhm,
you know, when my children and when they go to, there's no abuse, right? So there's no abuse or
Mm.
anything like that, but there's a lot of fighting, and you know, a lot of arguments, and because they're not used to that, it was very difficult for them. So it was really stressful for them, but I couldn't do anything about it.
Mm.
But we spoke
And
to
some
them.
mothers would, they
Mm.
would take them
Yes,
to court and things, but the
yes,
courts are not favorable to the innocent anymore. It's just,
no,
it's
they're
not,
not.
and I'm talking the United States, but it's the same way in South Africa. And I think in
Mm,
most countries, and
Mm.
there could be exceptions, but I wouldn't think that they are, unfortunately. We're not going to get men like Solomon. We're going to be able
no.
to determine, okay, this one is saying it's that my child. This is my child. No, it's not either. Let's see. We'll cut the baby in half. Okay, you said no, save the baby. You're the real mother. It's not that. That would be lovely, but it isn't the situation. So, yeah,
Yeah,
discerning
definitely.
what's going on is definitely. And I think too the ramifications of when there's a possibility of it, sometimes in this country, they'll take them from an abusive situation. There's abuse going on in the house, and
Yes.
whether it's always sexual, I don't know, but there's abuse going in. So they'll take them out of the home, like the child. And I don't think that, I don't know how you would present that to your child, but at schools here, they're like, oh, report abuse. So they might report abuse at their
Mm,
teacher and saying, there's abuse at home, or something like
mm,
that. And they're taken out of home and they're put in a situation that they are so unsafe in a
mm.
foster situation where other foster children have come from that, and that they're physically attacked or raped or something by, that happens all the time,
Yes.
all
Mm,
the time. And what was the
mhm,
Mm.
point of that? What was
mm,
the point of that? And then
mm,
these poor children are, now they have nobody really protecting them, and they end up on the streets. And
mm,
it's just a vicious cycle. There is no easy solution, but the fact that I think that the most important thing is, do not assume that by taking out a restraining order, or by running
mm.
away, or by having him arrested, is going to solve your problems, when
No.
they could exacerbate, I mean, just multiply your problems like you cannot believe. And I think part of this as believers is because he doesn't appreciate when we go to others for what he alone should do. He is our
Yes.
protector.
Mm,
And we need to go to
Yeah.
him for the answers, and not take the advice of other people, because that's all it is. Everybody, you
mm,
could ask 10 people, they'll all give you 10. Or with something like that, because we've been so conditioned and we're so fearful of not saying, run, get away, I'll protect you, that sort of
mm,
thing. They're afraid to do that. That
mm.
it just goes without saying that that's going to be the answer to your solution. And some they want you to tell them that, but I don't want to be responsible for that.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Yeah, because you do hear horror stories, right? That
yes,
when
there's so
when
many.
they run, it makes it so much worse.
Yes.
Because I've heard, and I mean, I
Because they're
haven't.
not all there. There's something wrong if a man is abusing, physically abusing or sexually abusing a child, children or family. There's something deeper in that. And just a piece of paper isn't going to solve it. And
No.
it just makes them more angry if
Mm,
you do something where you're trying to hide from them and then you're constantly on the run. It's just of course, we just wish it just wouldn't happen, but it is.
mm. Yeah, that would be the first one, right? That it just doesn't happen, but it is happening, and
Mm-hmm.
it is very tragic. But like I said, just going to him, it already it made the situation for the children better because they knew
Mm.
they had their father with them whenever they went there,
Mm-hmm.
and
I think
even now,
that brings up, don't move on to something else. I think that's really important. If your child goes to that or you hear of something, I think going to not just you go and pray apart, or tell them to pray. Do you know, right then, having the opportunity to just pour your heart out with your son or daughter or son and daughter or the children or whatever and say, and just humble yourself before so that they have an
Mm,
example to see. I don't know
mm,
what to do. We don't know what to do. We need your help. We know you can protect us. We need you to guide us. Help us to know what to do. Give us the wisdom to know how to do that. And just kind of and then, like you just said, then they know they have their father. And then remind them, even if I'm not there, even if you can't connect to me, right? That
mm.
you can
Yeah.
talk. I think that's why with children, especially if they're not, well, children, they're not always at home or they're not always with their parents. So that's why as a child who was separated from their mother, me, and I don't mean like I was taken out of custody, but every day that I was dropped over, we'd go over the Hollywood Hills and from
Mm,
my safe home, and they would just drop me there, you know?
mm, mm.
And then it was like, good luck getting home. That was my, and so that panic that I felt as a child, I can still feel it. I think a lot of those very traumatic things that happen when you were younger, and it was traumatic. I was so far from home, and it was in a time there wasn't cell phones. I couldn't even use a dime. They did have phone booths back in the olden days when I was young. And so I couldn't even go to get and pay to phone call because it was long distance.
Mm,
And here's the other thing. The chances of my mother being home was pretty negligible.
Mm.
So I wouldn't be able to get her any. So just to be able to reach out, but ever to get home, but knowing that I had him all the time. No, I wasn't fearless. Oh, I had that confidence. I didn't understand the relationship I had, but there was a security of knowing someone was with me all the time. I could feel
yeah.
that. I
Mm,
still
yeah.
felt fearful in situations,
Mm,
but I knew that I was constantly talking, and I would always ask, what am I supposed to do? Because I got into really some scary situations, and I was able to navigate my way out. I don't think it was because I'm any smarter. I'm certainly not, or
mm,
wiser or something, but I was able to, navigate. And I don't say that because if you couldn't navigate out of that you have a less of a situation. It's just what he called me to go through. That's all. I don't claim anything, but I do know that making sure that your children know that they have a heavenly father. And I think that it can be advantageous for a child who loses. I think somebody just wrote on a comment that their child doesn't know that the parents are separated. It's probably similar situation to when my husband left the four of us, four children, they didn't know either. All they knew is he's working farther away, right? But they still missed that he wasn't there all the time. But it was used to their advantage because, like my little, he was 4 at the time, and he was the one who was he's very emotional child, right? Very, very feeling. He has so many feelings, and he loves everybody together. And if anybody said goodbye, he would cry, right? To wait until his teens, because wants them all together. But I used the verse, I will never leave you or forsake you. He had that. And I said, that's your Heavenly Father. He's here all the time. He will never leave you. He will never forsake. He's always there. And it changed his life at 4 years old. He was a different boy after that. And he's very close, to the Lord now, but all the way through. So it could be such an advantage, because unless we have a need for the Lord in our life, or a father or a brother or something, then we can go through life apart from him, and not just for protection, just as some great person to hang around, right? I mean, why wouldn't you want that? But having that for your child is a really good thing, right? I think is really, really good. Anyway, I know we haven't given Adina a chance to talk about any of the verbal abuse or something. I've talked too much.
Yeah, it's also not a subject that I'm very familiar with, but I can easily see how, this can just turn into something terrible, if you accuse the other parent of something like, sexual abuse or whatever it is, how it can just be turned around against you. And maybe turned on, just turned that you end up looking like, the guilty party in anything. And
Yeah,
how
and it's not even just looking. If you're I mean, really, losing custody is a real thing, right?
Yes, I can just see how this can end up in so many bad situations, from bad court cases, custody battles,
Yes.
like you said, foster care, which I mean, I
Oh,
think
there's
could
nothing
be
scarier,
a
right?
nightmare.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can imagine just all these things that can happen, and me as well, I don't have answers. I don't have answers, and I don't think I will ever try to give someone an answer regarding this, because I mean, only the Lord knows, and only He can change situations. So I think it's vitally important for any mother or a parent to have that relationship with the Lord, and for the children to know their Heavenly Father and to know that He is with them always.
And to ask them about questions,
Yeah,
but they have to see you doing it in a way,
yeah,
right? And I think
yes,
too,
yeah.
I've read recently, because we're about to open up all the different branches and things, that they talk very much about their heavenly husband and things. I think it's very important that we understand that the word discreet, being discreet, is making sure that the other person you're speaking to is not uncomfortable. You make them comfortable. And so I don't go around telling everybody, or even my children who know that I've chosen, that I've got my husband is my maker, right? Or the creator. So they know that, but I don't go around talking, oh, my heavenly husband and I don't do that, because they wouldn't appreciate it. They would be uncomfortable, right? I wouldn't. I talk to you, but it's like that with it doesn't matter what the topic is. You don't talk openly. I know that that's not, a lot of people don't care anymore, because it's all about us and we're the center of the universe, and whatever we do, you have to accept my behavior. But it's not that way. We're supposed to be caring about others more important than ourselves. That's what the Bible says, and that's the way the Lord walked on the earth. So not bringing that up in that way, but doing it very carefully. And again, trusting your husband, that you talked about, but having him help you with that so they feel comfortable about it. Because if a child feels uncomfortable or anybody feels uncomfortable, whether you're talking to your sister or a neighbor or somebody that you don't want to, if they feel uncomfortable, a wall's going to come and they're going to pull away from it rather than being able to embrace it. So again, it's navigating, and it always comes back to the same thing about the protection and or who you go to for protection, for guidance, for everything, for all your answers. And inevitably, like I said, I'm not just trying to be humble, some false humility. It's really true. It doesn't matter if it's work related. The first thing that comes to my mind is one thing. As soon as I ask him, it's totally different. And it's not like, oh, it'll just be the opposite. It'll be something I've never thought of. And it's like, oh my gosh. And right away, that wisdom is from him. So having them be a part of it and talking to them about it, and in the practical sense. And I did that with especially I had that with my younger three, is asking them and doing that in their presence, and then giving them a chance to go and talk about that. There was an issue where there was a custody and I had custody. I was awarded custody, and then their dad was desperate and wanted custody, and he knew he wouldn't get it if he went to the courts. So he did the thing that so many will do. He just like took them and wasn't going to bring them back. And so, but when finally they did, and I was able to see them, I asked them, it's not a matter of my decision or your decision. What does God want us to do? You individually. So you need to hear from him directly, because it wasn't for me to say what was going to happen. And I said, and each one of them came back and they were very honest. What he told me is not what I wanted to hear. That's when right? And then that they have that connection. And though if you do lose that custody, one thing's for sure, they're not going alone. And they are with who matters even more than you do. Of course, I'm 100% without any doubt that I believe young children need their mother. I absolutely believe that. But it doesn't always happen. I mean, sometimes she dies. There's now these custody issues, that sort of thing that are going on. But one that 100% is that they have that Heavenly Father with them that can give them all the comfort and the guidance, and they're not alone. And I think that's comforting for everybody concerned, the mother and the children. So I think that's really important.
And it used to be that it was almost a done deal that the mother would get custody, but it's not anymore.
No. And it even we're getting back to what this whole topic was, like the most horrific, this sexual predator or something. I'll tell you some things that are happening just to show how far it's gotten. There's where a woman can be raped and give birth to a child, and that rapist can get custody. And one I heard, it was on that got custody, and she was paying child support, and she had, I think she had no contact with the child, but she had supervised. It is so bizarre. I mean, I don't know what would I do in that, but I'll tell you this: you cannot trust the judicial system. You cannot trust that. You can't trust the world. And so when you see that is possible, anything is, I mean, that what could be worse than that? And so you just cannot. I say that I think if there's one thing is with a gentle and quiet spirit, and a fool is considered wise when keeping silent, be quiet about this. I even think in discussing it with your friend or your sister or your mother, I know it might feel good temporarily, but talk about complicating everything, right?
Yes.
Unless you know somebody who's really going to say, I don't know, but I'm going to pray that he'll show you. I'm going to pray like crazy, like that. That's the kind of support that you need. So if you have a mother or sister or a friend or something, or ministry, but not knowing what to do with something like that, but to get the view or opinion of someone else when there's so much at stake. There's something, and I don't know, it just keeps coming back, so I'm just going to say it, and I don't know, but I have heard in a lot of, and I hate watching them, but it's like my husband has me watching them because I have to be aware what's going on in the world, right? And not just live in this, Shangri-La, because it's not that way while we're here on earth. It's not. And but I see these different ones. But one of the things that I have heard so many times, that when a mother, either she suspected or her daughter told her or something, one that's so sad is if a daughter says it and then they said stop lying. I don't know that happens that much in today's world. Back when, or they don't believe that the girl, whether it's happening with a father or sibling or somebody else, of course, to be believed is very important. But the other thing is that when it's happening like at night or something, is that I have heard where the mother just sits with the daughter or even sleeps with the daughter to protect from in the home predator, because it's pretty hard. However, there is one that I heard that's what she did, and then what happened was that somehow the daughter was picked up from school early, and then the father, and he was very violent, because of being like that. So again, it all comes back to the same thing. There's only one person that you can trust, right? Just
exactly. Because I know of someone, so I've this. It's a very sad story where it was her stepdad.
Yes.
And her mother didn't believe her. Her mother said, "You're lying." And in the end, I think in English you would call it the godmother and godfather of this child, took her away and said to the mother, "We're taking you to court if you don't let us keep her." And she stayed there with her godparents because of the abuse. And later, the mother passed away of cancer. So but still, it's just such a sad story that her mother didn't even
It
believe.
does happen, definitely incestual with the real father, but most of those, it is the stepfather, because he's not anything. And some are predators and they just go after these. That's another reason women need to, when they come and they've been rejected and their husband's left and they're involved with someone else, the last thing you want to do is get involved with someone else. That's the last thing you want to do, to get the stepfather or something and think that you're safe or they're safe. I mean, it's just, don't do it for the sake of your children. If nothing else, don't let another man in your house. Just do not. That's just crazy.
There's the statistics in the USA at the moment, right? Is that okay? So of course, abuse with your biological father does happen, but it's like a very minuscule. It is.
Yes.
But as soon
but they
as
group it together, right?
yes,
They
but
group
as soon
it
as
in.
the
Yes.
stepfather or
Yes.
someone else, right?
Yeah.
Your chances increases 4 times when it's not your biological father. So when it's not the child's biological father, the chances of that child being abused increases 4 times. That's a lot if
That is
you
a
really
lot.
think about it, right? So
Yes.
it's very, very sad, and a reason for ladies to, even if you don't think of anything else, let's use
Yes.
this as a reason if you've
Yes.
got children,
Yes.
to not marry again, to not let someone else that's not your child's biological father into the house, because
Yes.
in the end, your child was already a victim of divorce. And now you further, the
Yes.
image, I
Put
want
them
to
in
say.
danger. Yes. Yes. And there's just so many things. So that when you have a heavenly husband, and even though the whole concept seems so absurd, maybe. Like, this is so weird. Yeah, I think so. But there's a lot of weird things going on. And this is a really good, weird thing. And I can
Yes.
just attest to the peace and the protection and the being provided for. There's just, it's endless in that. But I think it is very, very important that you think about that. And the other thing is that you're not vulnerable. When you feel rejected, it's so easy to, well, I'm just going to go and do that, or a retaliation, that sort of thing. It's just a mistake. And your children, they're innocent to this, and they're the real victims of it. And maybe it wasn't much on your part. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, right? What matters is that child that's innocent, and they need your full attention. If a woman who husband runs off or whatever, and her focus becomes the children to help them through this time, and putting all, God will just bless you so much and give them that happy life and help them to navigate these difficult times because they're being rejected. And so many children say, oh, I thought it was my fault that he didn't want to stay, or he left, or whatever. It's really a sad thing for them to have that, and to go through life like that. So I think there's just so many things. I know we had other things on the list. Do we need to go through there? I think we have these things, but I don't know if they're in, I think we've
Yeah.
covered some of them. I think the note we had about how does the mother know about, did she tell? But again, it doesn't matter about that. I think the mother needs to navigate. And I just think knowing that we're praying and the support and encouraging her to do that. So I think that would be the most important thing. And to tell her to be quiet about it and be very careful if she goes to the authority, and just laying out the dangers, because it just seems like you're desperate. You want something to happen, right? You want
Yes.
to do something. You want this restraining order to work. You want to put this person in jail. But if they don't go to jail, or if they violate that, then what? And there's just
Yes.
too many children who are, the world has become very, very violent because people don't believe in God anymore. And I don't know, it gets darker and darker all the time. And so the last thing that they need is that it goes, even what could be worse than being sexually abused is your life being taken, and now they are without a mother, or that child's life being taken. There's just so many scary things. It's just too dangerous these days to play around with it, or to pretend that you have the answers when you don't.
Exactly, and I remember, I mean, it wasn't even that there was abuse or anything when I got divorced, but I remember my first instinct was, I need to get help somewhere. I need to talk to people. I need to ask them, what can I do, until I
Mhm.
found RMI and I was able to find him, and I could just go to him. But if I would have felt that way, how much more someone
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
in a worse situation, So you really have to sit with him so that, you can just get that
And
peace that
most of the
comes.
people here are listening to this and stuff. But like for
Mm.
me, of course, there wasn't an RMI, but I had
Yes,
the, right?
there
I didn't
wasn't.
have, there wasn't an RMI. And so but the first thing I remember when I made the mistake, well, I didn't make the mistake. It was good. But I would tell, don't make the mistake. But I remember mentioning it to my mother-in-law of what had
Mm,
happened. And the
mm,
advice that she gave me, I was like, no. You
mm,
know, she's telling
mm,
me, put the children in school. They were homeschooled. Put the little ones in daycare, put the other ones in school, go and get your job. And then the final one, and it had to be as absurd as that, um, for me to just, it was like that splash of cold water. And then tell your husband, my son, whatever, using his name, to move you into a smaller place. You don't need that big place. Well, it was absurd, because the thing is, the man had disappeared. Hello. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is track him down and say, hello, could you come back? I mean, I don't know where he is. That was the stupidest thing. And then the other thing I thought is, I'm not about to, my children have lost their father. He's nowhere to be found. I'm trying to hide the fact that he's just poof, gone. And you think the first thing I'm going to do is, now you don't have your dad, but you don't have me either. So goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. And it's all about money. The whole point, it isn't so bad for, she wasn't trying to be ridiculous or anything. I mean, she was trying to step in and have answers where, I mean, she passed on, but she claimed to be a believer. Well, why didn't she tell me? That's something I'm going to be praying about it. Right? That could be a start. But anyway, getting that bad advice. And then later on, I got where the pastor, when he was back, whatever. And then they said, oh, you should read this Tough Love. And I did. And, so it didn't take long. And even when I went to the church at one point thinking, he knows the word, come on. All right. So he's got the answer, because I had a lot of questions. This is farther along in my journey. And then his thing was these are all the pivotal points, right? The pivotal point was, oh, well, God honors that relationship. He's living with another woman. He honors that relationship, because if you're joined to another, right? He respects that one over being married. Like, wait, what? So I thought, okay, well, that you can't go there either. But I don't know why it took me so long to say, well, one, I didn't even know my Bible. I'd never even read the Bible. There was one around, but I'd never had it. So how would I know? Right. So anyway, it is that to discover it. But I think everybody, whether they find the Restore Your Marriage book, which is the one that most, but and the nice thing about God is so good, because it doesn't matter how far gone you are or how many mistakes you made, right? He's just going to take you in and just fix things or clear things up, or at least be with you as you journey through. When it's not an instantaneous, it's because he's got so many things he wants to show you, exciting things, discoveries. So just be watching that when it doesn't happen. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a journey towards your health, why doesn't he just instantly heal me? Right? Well, because he probably wants to teach you a lot of other things, maybe changing your diet or drinking more water. I don't know, or actually, whatever it is. And it's not the same for everybody else either. And once he knows it, you don't have to tell everybody, take the same journey. The whole point is they're taking a journey with their Heavenly Father or their best friend or whatever. I think the most, knowing you have a friend, right? That maybe is a good place to start. What we just want women to get away from is the religious thinking that he's up in heaven to pray to, but he's not here with us. And that's important, especially when you're, you mentioned about being a single parent or whatever, and people are saying about being a single parent. I think it's advantageous, if you ask me. I'm a whole 100%. I've got my grandchildren. I want them to have both their parents. I do. But I do know that if not by choice, but if by default, you end up a single parent, then you have advantage over the others in so many ways. You can be closer to your children because you have them and you're not distracted by your spouse, right? In that. And it can be double the blessing. They can be blessed by spending time and they have their father. You want them to have that, but you can read the Bible at the table, right? You can have Proverbs, you can sit with them, you can sing praise music. There's so many things that you may not be able to do if you were still married. So look for those good things and ask him for those things and take advantage of them. And by taking advantage of those good things, then you end up benefiting. Your child should benefit. That's what I believe. I thought my children should not have to suffer or be less than or be damaged from And the only way to do that is to find the good in everything and to make sure they experience the good, but you have to be the one to do that. You're the leader in that, and to live that happy life, and to show them how to take advantage of those situations. And then when they learn that, it doesn't matter what comes against them, that they've already learned how to do that in their lives, whether it's from health issues or whatever it is. But the people who've gone through the most are the most compassionate and caring and just special individuals. Don't you see that with people who've come through?
Yes.
Not the ones that are damaged from it, but they don't need to be damaged from it if they can just tap in. Even people who are secular, if they've lost a child through a drunk driver, for instance, and then if they go out on a campaign and then they're helping young teens do not drive drunk, and they have this drive to do it, their lives are enriched because they're caring about others. And so, see, good can come out of it, and not necessarily in any sort of Christian way or whatever, believers way. But anyway, I don't know where we are in our, if we should end it, if we need to give.
I just want to add something, and then Adina, I also want you to comment on this, because there was something that you said, Erin, that really resonated with me when you said, when you talk to him, don't talk to him like he's there up in heaven, speak to him like he's a friend. And for those of you that doesn't know, I was abused as a child, not by my parents or anyone like that. But for me, when I got the most healing, and I was very hard about it, I didn't talk to anyone, and it made me an angry person, right? But I met him. The time that I got healing from it wasn't when I prayed to him on my knees or anything like that. It was when I was like sitting down on the floor, and just talking to him about it, and just being honest about my feelings, and saying, and I'm telling you now, and you're not going to believe me, but my hand was on the floor, like you were sitting on the floor, you're sitting and got your hands pressed down on the floor, and it felt like someone was holding my hand, so it was
wow. I just got chills.
Yes, it was really a time of healing, not the praying or the on my knees, but there,
That's
sitting.
huge. Do you know, I mean,
Mm.
I don't have that, but when I ended up catching my husband when we were married, that was the beginning of our life. Okay. I didn't know it at the time, but I caught him with the other woman at a hotel. Okay. His boss sent me, and okay. So devastating, absolutely. And I had 4 little children, devastating. And I was a mess. But I remember I had that conversation. I wasn't sitting on the floor. Maybe I would have felt his hand holding my hand. I didn't happen. But I remember, I think I was just sitting I'd closed the toilet lid and sat there or something. But I had that conversation. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that, could it be that, I don't know that it's that simple, but in a way it is. But I remember, and I said everything I really felt. And it wasn't like I was even asking him about anything, like tell me or whatever. I was just being 100% open. And I think I have that somewhere. I think and he healed me. But I remember saying, I didn't want to forgive. I knew. And I go, I don't want to forgive. He doesn't deserve to be forgiven. Right. I had all these, right? I mean, but I didn't think, oh, well, I don't deserve to be. And I wasn't that way, because when you are so hurting, you're so desperate or so angry. I didn't feel anger. I wasn't angry at it. Not that it's, not possible, but I was just broken, right? I was just like, you think of what it all means. But anyway, all I know is that just like you, I really just was real and not hiding it in even a way. And I wasn't talking out loud. Were you talking out loud?
Yes, I was,
Oh,
because I
you
was
were.
alone,
Oh,
right?
that was good.
It was
Yeah, I
just
think,
me.
well, yeah, I wasn't alone I was in my bathroom in the master bedroom, but I didn't want the children could hear or anything. But but I shit all of that. And
Mm,
at the very end, I said, I know I need to, you'll have to do it. Because I refuse. And no, I just thought I can't do it. I just
mm,
can't. It just,
mm,
for all these reasons, I can't. But if you want to do it, do it. And that's why I says, who can forgive but God alone? I think he was the only one who could do it. But I was instantly healed from
mm.
that. And I had been in a stupor for like 3 days. I can't even remember what the 3 days. I was in like a shock, So it is something. And if that, since you mentioned it, I definitely would recommend it, right? And maybe
Yes,
with this, let's bring it full circle with these ladies who are in there. Talk to him, and maybe it would be a great place, I think, is get in the car and start driving, right?
yes.
Or
Yes.
pull somewhere if you're,
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, if you need to park, I don't know. But that way you are really insulated. Turn off your phone or something. Can they track you? Listen, but anyway, but a way to just be by yourself and be able to say, and now where people are talking on their phones or they have a ear thing, you don't even look like you're deranged. Back in the day, back in my old
Yes,
fashioned days, they're like, lock her up. She's by herself. But now they just assume you're on the phone with somebody else. I think
yes.
that too, because I talk out loud in my home by myself,
Mm.
Mm,
and I'll
me.
talk and I think, oh, people are, or I'll be out my screened in porch. So the neighbors could be, and I'll be talking to the Lord, just like
Mm,
right now I have a headset in, so they can't hear you on the other
mm,
side. But
mm.
I think that, oh, they're probably thinking, my gosh, the woman's deranged. Who's she talking to? She lives by herself. But then I think, no, they probably think I'm talking to somebody because I have those conversations, with them. But I think that would be very healing. But what about these mothers like that?
Mm.
And not only them doing it themselves, but encouraging their daughter to go and do that. Because if they could free that girl from being angry, right?
Yes,
Wouldn't
yes.
it?
Because that's what happened to me, right? It was the anger that really got
Mm-hmm.
me. The
Mm-hmm.
the anger that made me a very hard person, that didn't have any sympathy with anyone.
I
That
think it's
really,
very typical, isn't it, for this kind of a situation? I think anger comes from, I think when you're hurting, if you're hurting, but if it lasts too long, or I don't know. I mean, if you, right? It's
yes.
it's a deeper, it's like it's gone on longer, or it just can't. I mean, I think
Mhm.
you know what? Now I'm remembering my neighbor. I think I told you when we moved to the farm, the whole situation with my mother and being charged for her, with her
Mm,
death and all of that. And I was going through something, but my neighbor was going through, I thought was way worse because her son had been uh, killed in a drunk driver, right? But she said she was so angry. But she said because if she wasn't angry, she could feel the pain.
yeah.
I think that's probably what, there's so much
Mm.
pain in a situation like you're going through when a child or a young person or somebody has been molested or like that, sexually abused. There's
Mm,
so much pain. How do you cover it up? How do you deal with it? Well, they do, they'll go to drugs and more sex or whatever, and
mm,
alcohol and things. But there's an anger there because, or you'd feel it. She said
Mm.
she said she finally got too tired to be angry.
mm.
It took too much, it just drained her. But she said
Yes.
when she wasn't angry, she could feel it, but she had to just let it take its course so
Mm,
she could heal. And I don't
yeah.
know if you're still feeling that and there's still the pain, there's still the anger, then probably the healing can't take place.
Yes. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And the hardness, it just comes in so quickly when
Mm.
you don't heal from it. And
Mm.
so now I'm like, the children always always tease me because, my eyes would tear up very quickly. It doesn't even have to be something very bad. We would sometimes
Mhm.
just read something and I would feel my throat close up. And I would be like, oh, I don't like this soft heart of mine sometimes, but
Yeah,
it's better. It's much better than
it's uncomfortable, isn't it?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it's an uncomfortable situation for that,
yes,
especially when you think you have to be stronger or
yes.
right and put that face on. Yeah.
But I'd rather have the
Mm,
soft heart that's always
mm,
crying
mm,
than the
mm.
anger, because that's even
Right.
worse. The anger is really
Right.
even worse.
If you were
So
a young girl then, and I mean, obviously your mother wouldn't know or whatever, but we've been talking about what do we do, how do we help a mother? So being the child of having a mother, what would you, uh, if, like what would you have a mother say? Because being in that situation, this helps. I think, I don't know, like that, talking to being able to talk and share and sometimes and just being able to not share it with a person. Do you know when I tell somebody when you tell somebody about something, right? You kind of
mm,
get a quick fix, right? You feel better.
yes,
Yes.
It doesn't last, right?
no,
It doesn't
never.
last
Mm.
until you really talk to the Lord or God the
Mm,
Father until you really do that, then it works,
yes,
right? So I
definitely.
think that is, so it's not even that they have to tell everything because a lot of them, oh, I'm going to go tell this counselor or to tell the police
Mm,
or something. But I think the thing that matters is how is that affecting that person, that child,
mm,
and letting
mm,
them be able to say it. And maybe, and it's very hard to say, so
mm,
they can tell someone who understands, who was there, who understands everything. So just
mm,
share it and share it privately with them and get it all out and maybe out loud in a place where they feel safe and they'd be alone. Would you? Is that what something you might?
I, I, you know, it's difficult for me to say because I never really spoke up. I never said anything to anyone, right?
Mm,
I
mm,
never even told my mother because
mm.
it wasn't. I don't know how to say. It was like embarrassment, like it was
Of
my
Mm.
course.
Fine.
right,
No,
like
that's not.
something that I did wrong. So I never said
I think
anything
that
to
there
them.
are, even for all those that people know, I think there's so
Mm,
many that it's like that. They don't even realize
mm.
that it's
Yeah,
happening, that they're ignorant to it,
Mm.
right? I
exactly.
think
But looking back now, I'm not even sure if it if I should have told someone, if I should
no,
have
I'm not
kept
saying that
quiet.
at all, just so you
Yes,
Mm.
know.
yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
saying that at
What
all.
what I do wish is that I had
Mm,
him as a friend, because then things would have been different, right? It would
exactly.
have been
It's about talking to the person who understands,
yes,
who can keep all your secrets, right?
yes,
Mm.
yes.
Who's not going to say anything that
Mm,
could hurt you. I think
yes,
that's it, right? To be hurt even any more than you already are. That was one of the
yes.
reasons I stopped telling anybody about my situation. I didn't want to hear their comments or
Yes.
anything. I just, it's bad enough what I'm feeling. I don't need to, or they're traumatized for it, or they're upset about what's been
Mm,
done to you, or how your children have been treated, being abandoned, I'm talking about. But I don't want to deal with their emotions, right? And I think
yes.
with a child too, I think you think that I think children too can be protected of their mother, or they don't want their
Mm.
mother to feel sad about it or something. But I think the most important thing is getting them to be able to talk to the one person. And maybe they
Yes.
don't even need them then, or
Mm,
not need them, not even know them then, that they
Mm.
don't
yes.
even know that person. And
Mm,
with that, like I did when I was able to speak in different parts of the world, so many people would say, but I don't even believe in God. And I said, it's okay.
yeah.
It's
It's okay.
okay. The first thing you need to do is, and I would always tell them the same thing, go talk to him and
Mm,
and start with this. I don't even believe, just tell them exactly, I don't believe you exist. That's the way you
exactly.
feel. Tell them. or I'm not sure you exist, or, something like that. And then just say, show me that you exist. I'm going to talk to you. Show me you exist. And boy, you don't have to do any more than that. He shows himself. He'll make sure that if you want to find him, if you want to know if he's real, he'll make sure. So that's the first thing. I don't know you, or I don't feel worthy to talk to. Any feelings that's keeping you from that relationship, and just telling them. But I think that's really, really important. And it's not talking to yourself. There's a lot of it that now they've substituted that, right? Talk to yourself about it. Talk to your younger self. That's a new thing. Whatever. Talk to your younger self. Well, that ship has sailed a long time ago. I mean, it's ridiculous. I can't talk to my younger self, but I'm talking to the Lord. So there's somebody there, and it's worthwhile, and there's fruits from that. There is great fruits. People who share about that they really, really talk to them. And when they're people coming for salvation, I would not let them repeat. I would say something, you repeat after me. You're missing the point. Go ahead. And many of them would be like a little child speaking, or in a very, prayerful way, but just that humble, but just to start that communication. So you see, it is. And how do you feel now, right? How do you feel afterwards? You can do this all the time, no matter where you are, no matter what the situation, no matter how bad things are, no matter how much ashamed, whether it's false shame, you shouldn't feel that, but you do. Whatever it is, you can talk to him. And that's when the healing will start. And like you said, the anger and whatever, because I think it's just too painful. I think that stems from pain, right? I mean, you must have had so much pain.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And ignoring the problem, it's like, I'm not saying talk to anyone, but ignoring that it even happened, that's also not a good thing to do, right?
Yes.
So,
But it's a way of coping. That's what they're coping.
Of course,
and again, that's why to acknowledge it to him, at least admit it to him or whatever, right?
Yes, because that's when my healing started, is when I sat and I admitted it to him, and I told him my feelings without even holding anything back, and that's what, and I don't think that talking to anyone else would have caused that same healing that I got
absolutely not. I can
no,
absolutely not.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
So, Adina, do you want to close this podcast for us?
If we leave it to us, we'll talk all afternoon.
No, I just want to add about, prayer and stuff and healing. When, I grew up, God is sitting in heaven, he's there, unreachable, untouchable. We can just, all our prayers go up to him. And it always felt like, before my journey started, like you would pray, and then it would just bounce off the ceiling. And then after my journey started, it was like he was asking me, but why do you want your prayers to go up? Because I'm just right here next to you.
Yes.
It doesn't have to go up. You can just sit and talk to me. I'm here with you. You can just talk to me and share your heart with me. And that's also for me, I think, where the greatest healing came from, is just being able to sit and talk to him and just share what you are feeling, no matter what it is. Just share it with him. Don't try and just say a proper prayer and, just be real with him.
Forgive me for interrupting, because I'm going to, but I think that some of this we've been talking about different things, but with this one mother we were talking about, or any of the mothers, and they're facing this, or what, don't you think them having these conversations because as a mother, if it was happening to my daughter or my son, the guilt, all these things that you're feeling. I think having a very good talk. Isn't there was a song, have a little talk with Jesus, tell him all your, do you know that story? Do you know that song? But anyway, and having that conversation and really getting it, because they're going to have these same, for a different reason, but I think there where it starts. And if they can do that, then they almost have a testimony, or they can say, this helped me so much because this is how I felt when you told me about this, or whatever, or I suspect this. But don't you think it's starting with the mother and her getting that comfort and that understanding and getting that relationship with the Lord first, and then being able to use that experience and be able to share wholeheartedly, because it's not talking to them in a way, it's talking with them and bringing them in to help them with it. But it's just like you said, and he's right in saying he was right there with me. It's not, in the past, or, getting on your knees or whatever. And I'm not opposed to any of those kinds of religious things, but I think it just keeps it back in that religion. He's up there. You need to pray. You need to do penance. You need to be better. You need, all these things get just mixed up when it's the relationship that matters. Always with women, it's all about relationships, right?
That's how we were made, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah,
It was.
definitely.
And that's the one that they need the most, no matter who it is. And if they don't feel protected, they need a father. If they need somebody, just a friend, then be that, whoever that they need. But I think it starts with the mother, because that's who most likely we're going to be talking to, or whoever it is. I think it always comes back to that, and just sharing that. But, I can share my conversation, and I'm not going to, because that conversation that I shared about, it was more about forgiving him, do you know? But I think there was more to the healing that I probably, until you shared your story about talking about what you went through and the anger that you have, and sitting down and feeling he's with you. I think that was happening.
Yeah.
And that's probably what brought the healing. And of course, the forgiveness, yes. But I think that whole encounter was not just about forgiveness. So I'm not going to forget that when I need to share it with someone. And then I can share your story too. And the more stories. So if the listeners have a story that's similar to that, I don't have to get into a whole bunch of depth, but boy, it would be nice to hear that, because the more that we have, then we can recall those when we can give it to someone else who needs to hear that.
Definitely. Yes, I agree. And with that wise words, ladies, thank you so much for joining us here on the Encouraging Women podcast. And if you have any testimonies, please let us know, because every testimony helps someone else to overcome obstacles in their life. So ladies, thank you so much for being here, and hope we'll see each other again on our next podcast. Bye-bye, ladies.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.